So what an exciting golf tournament this past weekend. Matthew Wolff getting his first PGA Tour win. What can we learn from his golf swing? Obviously, it's a very unique swing, but there's some great attributes in there. And typically, I usually see people that are struggling with their ball striking doing the opposite of what he does. And more specifically, I want to talk about his wrist conditions today. So I've got my Hack Motion wrist sensor on, and the numbers that I want you to focus on, you can see my wrist moving there in 3D, is the green box, right? You can see those are my flexion extension numbers. So here, as I bow my wrist, I'm going into more flexion. You see it get down to a negative number. And as I go back to level, right, a flat wrist would be closer to 0. And then from there, moving into extension, okay? And I get a high positive number, almost up to positive 50 right there. So when we take a look at his golf swing, you can see he does exactly that. He's in a very extended position when he gets to the top of his backswing. His left wrist has a lot of angle this way, but he does not stay there. As he kind of goes to use the ground and get his legs to really dig in and rotate, we see that wrist going into a very flexed position. Okay, that's part of what's going to allow that shaft to shallow and lay down. And from that position on, he keeps that flexed position a long time into the downswing. And why that's so important, you can see when my wrist is more flexed, it's easier to keep the club head inside or behind my hands. As soon as I bring it out into an extended position, my club's going to kick outside my hands. It's going to bring my swing path too much to the left from that point on. Or if I get it up to the top, and what I see a lot of amateurs do as they start down, I see this wrist go from a flexed position slightly to a very extended position. And as soon as that happens, we get this lightning rod look with the shaft where the club is just standing straight up. So they're either going to swing left and cut across the ball, or they're going to stand up and maybe block the ball out to the right. But we can really take a note from his book of getting up to the top, right? You don't need to be where he needs to be, but what we see, especially with using this Hack Motion wrist monitor, all good players are going from a more extended position at the top, right? I'm about 30 there, to where it's slightly flexing as they start down. That gives me a good pinch on my elbows. So you notice there as I go to flex that lead wrist, see how my right elbow pinches in? It gets closer to my left elbow. The club face gets into a stronger, more de-lofted position, and that shaft starts to shallow. And hopefully we're starting down with our legs as we do it. We're not just, standing here doing it just with our hands and arms. It might not be the end of the world just to start that way, but eventually work it to where you can start to feel your legs doing it, and then maintain that feeling late into the downswing. So we see even at this position, his left wrist still has that look of his logo of his glove being more down at the ground. That's really important for lag, for keeping the club head more behind our hands, and it's really important because when I get to impact, in order to compress the ball, I want to have that same feel to my lead wrist. You see that little bow to my lead wrist. Anytime I get into that extension position coming through, I'm going to add loft. My 8-iron is going to become a 9-iron, and I'm going to end up scooping the ball up in the air. So let me show you a great drill where you can get that exact same feeling in your wrist. Okay, so all we've got is just a plastic coat hanger. Just go ahead and place it on top of your grip. They actually sell an official one called the golf hanger. I have one that I teach with all the time, but if you don't have that, you can use this. It'll work pretty well too. And you notice as I start, the hanger just rests right in between my forearms. And the feeling that I want you to have is go up to your backswing, up to the top. It's still a little bit in between my forearms. As we start down and I go into more of that flex position, I'm going to feel that hanger push up against my left arm. And here's the hard part. I'm going to continue to work it down with my legs, but I'm keeping that hanger up against my left arm. That's going to continue all the way until about half follow through. So from this view, you'll see it up to here, up to the top like normal. Put a little bit of that rotation to your wrist and forearms to get the hanger onto your lead forearm. Down, 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 keeping it. And then right on through, and I've still got it here against my lead arm. Okay, so one more time slowly from behind. Hanger's not on my arm. Now I start to work my legs. I'm putting a little bit of a twist on the end of the grip there to give me more flexion in my left wrist to get my right arm to pinch in. and I feel that hanger pushing up against the bottom of my wrist. Here, keeping it, releasing it through, and I've still got it there. Okay, so we've got some reps in with the hanger. Our hands are a little more educated in how to get into that flex position coming down. Let's go ahead and start to hit some shots. And I think the thing that really gets the most people when they work on this is as you start down, they can get that sensation of the lead wrist flexing, the right elbow pinning. It's hard to keep it really late into the downswing because the club feels like it's so far back and behind me from where it normally is. But that's exactly where we want it to be coming and approaching from. Gives us more angular momentum or more time for that club to accelerate. So start slow. Don't try to hit the ball very hard. So as I'm looking at my hack motion numbers there, right, at address, my grip was at 45, top of backswing. I was at 37, right in there. And from there down to the downswing, I decreased all the way down to 18. And that's exactly the thing that we see good players doing. We see those numbers going from a little more extended at the top to more flexed in the downswing. And that's exactly what Matthew Wolff does. So let's go ahead and grab a hanger. It only costs you 50 cents or so. Go hit some shots, work on shallowing that club, using the proper wrist conditions to get you in a really powerful hitting position. Okay, so you've heard me talk about how important it is to shallow the golf club in transition. I've got a 3-part video series that's totally free that goes in depth on how you can do this better and why it is so important and exactly why you need to get it in your golf swing. All you've got to do is click on the link down here, put your email in, and you'll be part of that free video series, and you can access it any time. It'll help you to understand why it's so important to get the club to shallow in your downswing, and it'll help improve your ball striking.